recovering addict. My name is Rich. Everybody hear me all right? I can't tell from being up here. I don't want to yell. I want to thank the committee responsible for asking me to come out here. It's a pleasure to be at your function tonight. Thank you. And I'm always grateful to be clean. That's the biggest thing. And you don't have to take my inventory because I'm going to display it so we can let the judging begin. All right? I don't want anybody to be upset about their judgmental shit. Oh, excuse me. So anyway, it's hard. I don't know where to start, and all the stuff that if anybody's done this, you want to be of value while you're here. You know what I mean? And I've been so nervous that it's amazing. But I need to just say that so maybe they'll leave me alone for a second. And I'm just kind of get right into my story, if you will, and hopefully I'll get right in track and we'll all be okay. I've been getting high since I'm 11 years old. Well, this is what I want to say. I'm already breaking up, but I know when I go to a speaker meeting and the speaker gets into a drug-a-log, I want to leave. So I promise you I won't drug-a-log you, but I will qualify. But when I'm in your chair, what I want to hear is, how'd you work the steps? How'd you get a sponsor? How'd you get honest? You know what I mean? How'd you change your life? How'd you learn to live and enjoy life without the use of drugs? Those are the things that attract me to a speaker, not how much drugs they did for how long and all that stuff. So that's what I try to do when I'm up here. And I give you that so you got a heads up, and hopefully it keeps me on track too, because I want to talk about what the disease of addiction means to me today, what recovery looks like to me today, and how my life has changed, how I'm into the second part of the promise of finding a new way to live. But I need to just, for those who are new, who identify at a level of substance or something, I want to say that I've been getting high since I'm 11 years old, and I love drugs. Drugs are my best friend in life, and I don't think I ever truly wanted to stop getting loaded. What I wanted was the consequences to change. I wanted to find a way to get high without selling my shit 3 o'clock on a Sunday morning. You don't get nothing for your shit 3 o'clock on Sunday morning. Like when you ever carry the TV down the street 3 o'clock in the morning, hope you get to the connection before the cop sees you. You ain't getting nothing for the TV, but you're going to get something. I mean, as bad as my drug addiction was, I still hung on to it, and I think part of it was because I started so young. And I remember the euphoric recall. And for many years, I lived a very destructive lifestyle and hurt a lot of people because I didn't want to let go of that. As bad as it was for me, I was afraid to get clean. I thought life would suck without drugs. I'm thinking, how do you have fun without drugs? How do you date girls without drugs? How do you talk to people without drugs? I couldn't fathom a life without drugs. So I tried really hard and long to find a magical way to use successfully, and I never found that. And as a result, I spent about 15 years in prison. I've wrecked every relationship, marriage, business, anything I ever had good in life was destroyed because of this disease of addiction. And I suffered a great deal myself, But it took a long time for me to embrace the program of Narcotics Anonymous. I grew up in New York, and you may hear that in my voice. I don't know if that's coming through or not. But yeah, if you don't, you're just not worldly enough, and it's all right. But I grew up in a neighborhood with a lot of gangsters, real gangsters. I mean, I'm talking, the ones that Hollywood makes their movies about. And I loved those guys, and I wanted to be a thug, and I was Italian, and I fit right in. The problem was I had a drug habit, and they didn't accept that too well, which was hard for me to comprehend when I was young, but I get it now. And I grew up with a lot of those influences in my life, and what it means to be a man. A man don't ask for help. Do unto others before they do unto you. If you want something, you take it. You don't show emotion. You don't show signs of weakness. That kind of stuff. And I share that because not only was that those big inputs, but the twisted values I grew up with. Like I grew up, you were supposed to get over. You know what I mean? If you had a knot of money in your pocket and you didn't work for it, you were idolized in my neighborhood. You were somebody. And that's what I wanted to be like. I never wanted to be like a carpenter or a plumber or electrician. I had no desire ever to be like an apple pie American, if you will. I always wanted to have the quick buck, the quick high, and the get over mentality. And I share that because I know it can be very common in certain parts of Narcotics Anonymous, if you will. And I also share it because it was extremely difficult for me to embrace spiritual principles because of my upbringing. You know, I didn't come here to get spiritual. I didn't believe the solution was spiritual. I didn't believe I had a disease of addiction. You know, and when they told me, like, you know, practice honesty, whatever, I didn't want to hear that. You know, I came here because I had a drug problem. I didn't come here I wanted to be some choir boy. You know, and I struggled with Narcotics Anonymous for a long time, and I'll talk about that. By the time I was 17, I started going to prison. I didn't get done with that until I was in my mid-30s. I started 7 months or 9 months of the 80s, the whole decade on the streets. You know what I mean? I was out like 3 months between my first and second bid and 4 months between my second and third bid. And they deemed me incorrigible. I never made a parole board in my life. And I wore my time on my sleeve like a badge of honor. You know, I was a tough guy. And you better know I was a tough guy was my kind of attitude, you know. And I liked that people were afraid of me, you know. And today I know from doing step work it was more about me being afraid of you and keeping you up off of me than anything else. But at the time I wasn't conscious of that. But I grew up really hard and really fast, and I grew up on the streets, and I didn't have a lot of parental guidance. I was allowed to self-regulate, which is horrible for anybody, let alone an addict. And I was always wayward, man. To me, even as a young child, doing the wrong thing was fun. You know, causing somebody else aggravation or anger was fun. You know, and when people told me don't get high, because I heard a lot of that growing up, or them drugs are ruining your life, what I heard was, you don't want me to have fun. I didn't hear this was bad for me. You know, I love drugs, literally. They were literally my best friend in life. And what happened was, let me just say, you know, thank you to H&I for a couple reasons. H&I feel, found me. That's when I tell people my story in Narcotics Anonymous. I was doing my third state sentence, and H&I came into the facility. And the only reason I went to the meeting was I heard if you went, you got some rhythm with the judge, which was a bunch of BS, but I didn't know it at the time. But I went, and I got exposure to NA. And it was like, wow, you know, like, what got me more than anything was the readings. You know, live to use and use to live. I identified 100%. Put the use ahead of the welfare of my family, you know, wives, husbands, children, I get it, you know what I mean? Slowly committing suicide. That stuff touched me. It made me feel like there's something here that I'm connecting with that I never connected with before. However, I didn't want to stop using drugs. And but I got the seed planted. I got the exposure. I'll never forget that. Joe, can I get a bottle of water or something for that? There was this one guy who used to bring the H&I panel in every week to his facility I was locked up in. And I would talk to the guy after the meeting sometimes. I got to know him. And he said to me, he said, why are you here, man? I said, oh, man, I said, my cousins turned state's evidence on me. You believe that shit? He said, oh. He said, what happened the time before that? I said, man, some lady took my plate number down right when I went through the light after the robbery. He said, wow, it's a bunch of bad luck. And I said, yeah. He said, what happened the first time? I said, man, some snitch. You know, we made a score. We sold some shit. Somebody snitched on us. He said, you got a lot of bad luck, don't you? I said, don't I? He said, no. What are you talking about? He said, you ain't a victim. He said, you blaming other people for being in jail. He goes, you need to take it all the way back to yourself. If you didn't do what you did, you wouldn't be here. It ain't their fault they did what they did. And I hated him instantly. I was like, don't you dare break my denial. You leave me alone over here. I'm enjoying this blaming other people thing. But he made me, what he did for me was, because what he said to me was, you're not a victim. He said, the decisions and choices you make shape your life. And if you learn to make good choices based on the program of Narcotics Anonymous, you never have to be in jail again. And he got me thinking that, okay, maybe I am responsible for my choices. I still didn't want to stop getting loaded. You know, that came a long time later. But what happened was, I got out of jail last time, prison, in, what was it? 1992 was the last time I got out. And in New York, I don't know how it is here. I've been fortunate, never had to go to prison in California, never been arrested in California, anything. But in New York, in order for you to get out, you got to have an address you're going to parole to, and at least they call it a reasonable letter of reassurance for a job. And I had my cousin write me a bogus letter for employment, and I begged my mom and dad to take me back in. I haven't lived with my mom and dad since I was 17, and here I am in my 30s now. But I've done burnt every bridge in life. You know what I mean? I had nowhere to go, and I wanted them to help me out. And at this point, I thought my problem was just like coke and dope. I didn't identify at the disease of addiction level, and I wasn't ready to surrender. And I thought that I could still enjoy the gateway drugs that I did as a child and still be able to control how I felt, or my reality, if you will, and be fine. That was my denial. Within 2 weeks of paroling with them, I started, I was using within a few days, but within 2 weeks of living with them, I started, first I used to play adult army man. I don't know if anybody ever played adult army man. You crawl in the bedroom at night on your hands and knees, try to get to the pocketbook like a snake, right? See what you can get, and then you get on out. But that didn't last long. Mom and Dad didn't want to play that game. And they kept moving the goods. So, I'm fresh out of the joint, all these years locked up. I'm real hard core kind of guy, and I'm real straight to the chase. I'm not into a lot of fluff or anything, and I had no stories left at this time. Years ago I could call Mom up and say, hey Mom, you know what, they're going to tow my car, or, I'd be living a few hours later, wire me some money, and, or my girlfriend got locked up, or she needs an abortion. I'd flim-flam them somehow. But now I'm living with them, and all I got is a bike that's got a slow leak in the back tire, and I can't call them up and say, hey, 2 o'clock in the morning, can I get $20 for a swing? It ain't going to happen. So I started, going down to the bedroom. Mom, what? Wake up. What's wrong? I need $20. For what? I need some crack. Straight up. No bullshit. That's what I started doing. And he got ugly. It wasn't like, oh, Rich needs crack. Here you go, Rich. No. It was like banging on doors and stomping feet and threatening me with the cops and, all this stuff. And I'd get the money. Finally, I'd get the money. And the mistake I had made in my neighborhood was, New York is a little different than the way you cop out here, but you go in abandoned buildings for the most part in New York, and anybody knows how you cop, but there's a lot of places to cop. And what I did was, I had a tendency to rob drug dealers, and I robbed the ones closest to my house first, which was the dumb move. Because now I got to get through them on my bike with a slow leak to get to the other ones, the cops, and I could never make it home without the tire going flat or them beating me up and taking all the shit or whatever. So it was ugly. So my brain said, you know what? Have Mom take you to the cop spot. Like, you're waking her up anyway. All right, so now it was, give me $20 for crack and drive me to the cop spot. And Mom got spooked. When I came down, she was gone. Now I didn't have a bike with a slow leak to get home. So I had to walk home, and I got stomped out, but I said, this is never happening again. Next night, and that wasn't like I quit, don't get me wrong. Next night when I woke her up, I yanked the keys out the ignition. Didn't ask her, just reached over, excuse me, and now I go up in the building, I come down, Mom's like crying, petrified, and this went on for about 3 or 4 weeks. It got to the point where I would make them take me sometimes 2 or 3 times a night and smoke in the back seat on the way home. I was never a guy to abuse my family growing up. I was always a thug and a crook and all that stuff, but I never brought it home. I always did my business out in the street, but I lost my cojones to commit crime, because every time I did, I'd get a sentence. And they were my victims, because I still blame them for who I was. I still blame them because I hated life. I blame them because I couldn't get it together. I blame them for having me and all this bullshit, excuse my language. But I knew it was wrong, and it wasn't okay to do what I did. But like most of us, I lost the ability to do anything about it. If I could have controlled myself, I wouldn't have been doing what I was doing. But I had to have the next one. I didn't just want the next one. I had to have the next one. And that's why so many people got hurt in my story. And I got a gang of stories like that, but this was one of my bottoms, and I want to talk about it because what happened, this is how I really came to Narcotics Anonymous. What happened was, my dad went to a Naranon meeting, right? Damn Naranon. And when I woke him up that night, he said, look, I went to an Al-Anon meeting, they told me to talk to you. If I keep talking to you, the craving will pass. An obsession only lasts for about 2 hours. No, I'm going, where you getting this shit from? And I didn't want to talk about it. I wanted to get high. So, it got really ugly. I mean, I was on the floor like a 2-year-old. You know how we scream, please, just one more, I'll stop tomorrow, I swear to God, all that, shit we say to get whatever we want. And he wasn't going for it. And they were raising my Dauphine brother's kid, who was 6 years old at the time. He was, I think, living in Vegas or hiding in Vegas or something. But I got desperate, and I went to the kid's bedroom, and I grabbed the kid, and I brought him to that bedroom door, and I held him up by his hair. Kid's screaming, I got a butcher knife now. And I says, I will rip this fucking kid from ear to ear. You're going to give me that $20. Now, I ain't saying I would have cut the kid, because I don't think I would have, but I knew if I did that, I'd get the $20 and I'd get the ride to the cop spot. I didn't get the ride, actually. I got the $20 and I took off because Mom called the cops. And I didn't come home that night because I was afraid that the cops were going to be there. But I came home the next night around dinner time. My family has dinner 5 o'clock every day, like you could set your clock to it. And when I came in the kitchen door on the side of the house, the 3 of them were at the kitchen table, and my little nephew jumped up back from the table when he saw me and ran into the basement, locked himself under the workbench in the doors, because his insane uncle was in the house, and he didn't know what I was about to do again. And my dad said, you know what, man? He said, I need to talk to you. And I knew it was coming. Same old, you ain't shit, never going to be shit, all that stuff's going to come. But what he said this time was, he says, you know what, Rich? You need to go somewhere else and die. You're killing your mother, you're killing me. You need to go somewhere else and die. Don't do it in our house. Please, take your insanity somewhere else. And I was like, wow. I couldn't believe those words, man. Like, that's not what I expected. But he was right. I need to take my shit somewhere else. Leave them alone. They're the only ones that loved me all my life, sent me stuff when I was locked up and tried to, teach me good things. I mean, my house was dysfunctional in many ways, but, it wasn't like, total insanity all the time. They did the best they could. I look at it like that. So I got out of the house and I went to parole, and I told them I had a problem again. They put me in a detox. The detox talked about a 28-day program. The 28-day program talked about a halfway house, and I would do all this stuff, and I went to the halfway house, and you had to go to meetings. You had to do a 90 and 90. You had to get a sponsor. That's my special powers. I was going to save that for later, but, So I figured, okay, let me try this thing that I got introduced to years ago in the joint. Let me try Narcotics Anonymous. And I had my eye open for a sponsor, and I remember seeing the same guy at 2 meetings night after night. And I'm thinking, wow, this must be meant to be or something. You know what I mean? And little bit I don't know. It's a small community. That happens all the time, but I liked the guy because he shared something about if he had as many needles sticking out of him as in him, he looked like a porcupine. And I related to that. So I asked the guy to sponsor me. And he said, okay. He said, I'm going to tell you what, come over to my house Friday, and we'll talk about sponsorship. He said, it's a serious thing, sponsorship. It's like a relationship, it's a commitment. And I'm thinking, all right, I don't know what I'm getting into, but all right. So I showed up Friday, and he fed me. And I'm thinking, man, that's nice, fed me, you know what I mean? He left me alone in his living room. You don't leave me alone in your living room, because I'm going to steal your shit. And I was looking, just in case I relapse maybe, but I was looking, I didn't steal nothing. But after dinner, he said, we're going to talk about this sponsorship relationship. I said, all right. He said, I want you to do a 90 and 90. I said, you want me to go to a meeting every day for 3 months, right? He goes, yeah, 90-90. I said, look, I ain't 5. I know what 90 days is. You don't have to say 90 meetings, 90 days. Just say go to a meeting every day for 3 months. I get it. I didn't understand. I thought he was demeaning me. He told me a 90-90. He said, I want you to stay out of a relationship for a year. I said, oh, I get it. He's trying to get in my pants. That's why he brought me out. He brought me to his house. He fed me, right? Told me that game related. I get it now. So I picked the wrong sponsor, man. No wonder why he's hugging on me and shit. Damn it. So that didn't work out too good. I wasn't ready. I was really broken when I got here. You know, I'd go to meetings. I mean, I remember going to a meeting, and man, there's lots of kids here. I can't express well. You know, I go to meetings, and like people were sitting there telling on themselves. And where I come from, you don't tell on yourself. You know, I mean, you don't do that, man. I remember all these horrible things. People talking about sexual stuff that happened to them, or sexual stuff that they were doing for their drug, and I'm thinking, in an open room like that, what is wrong with these people? And they changed the English language on us. I'm going. They said, you gotta surrender to win. And I'm going, wait a minute, man. In my neighborhood, you surrender, you're a coward. What are they talking about? You don't win when you surrender, you lose. You know, and this guy was going on and on about one is too many, 1,000's never enough. And the first time I heard that, my first thought was, if one is too many, is a half okay? Right? I mean, is there a clause or something? Can I do a half? Right? And 1,000 never enough. Listen, man, I ain't never had 1,000 or nothing in my life. Leave me alone. If I get 1,000, let me enjoy it. Why do you want to rain on my parade? What is wrong with this program? And another one they said was less self, more others. Is that even English? What the fuck does that mean? Less self, more others. I mean, I was not ready for Narcotics Anonymous. I got to tell you the truth. You know what I mean? I didn't want to go to jail no more, but I didn't want to join this cult. You know, I wasn't that desperate. You know, a bunch of hypocrites, and told me. He said the other one used to kill me was. This is a spiritual program, not religious. Or why is God up and down them steps? And why are y'all praying? And, you know, that stuff. And I didn't get it. And it's okay. You know, that was my experience coming into the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous. It was a real battle for me. And that's why I talked about the way I grew up. It was very hard for me to embrace spiritual principles. But you know what? That wasn't going to get my attention anyway. It wasn't like, if you just told me, look, Rich, if you practice honesty, or if you have some integrity, or if you have some forgiveness, your life's going to be better. I believed you. That wasn't going to happen. I had to beat myself down so bad. I had to humiliate myself so many times that I got to a point of complete surrender. So for the next 8 years, okay, 8, I was a chronic relapser. And that ain't a proud thing to share anywhere, but I also know that I bet you there's relapses sitting in this room. Or at least if you ain't done it or struggling with it, you've been there, or you're gonna be there. And you need to know that no matter how many times you've relapsed, it's about keep coming back to Narcotics now. Because what I learned was, if I bring the body, the mind will follow. And that's what I needed to do. I needed to keep coming back no matter what. Even when they told me I was setting a bad example for the newcomer. I had a guy one time tell me, look, man, why don't you go out and use, you can't use no more, because you keep coming back like every 60 or 90 days, and you're really setting a bad example for these new guys. Yeah, he told me that. You know, but it was pretty unbearable, and the using wasn't fun, you know, but it's like it's all I knew. I never learned how to cope. I always learned how to cop. And that's what I did. And it was second nature to me. Like somewhere in our readings talks about it's abnormal for us to stay clean. You know, and it was like you gave me a shot of electricity when I was stark raving clean is the best way I could probably explain it. I didn't know how to live with or without drugs, and with the drugs seemed better. You know, because I just couldn't, I was like a raw nerve trying to be clean in Narcotics Anonymous. I had no surrender. And through those 8 years, because I had such a distaste for Narcotics Anonymous, yet I knew I had a drug problem, but I didn't have a disease, I tried other solutions, like we sometimes do. I remember reading the back newspaper, The Village Voice in New York, and it said something about if you have a drug problem, try hypnosis. So I said, okay, what I got to lose? You know, they pay you if you're working, but I wasn't working. But I went down there, and they tried to put me under, but I couldn't go under. So I went and I got high that night. And then I saw this thing at a methadone clinic for hypnosis, for acupuncture. So I remember going to get some acupuncture, and they put needles all my ears like that movie. What is that movie, Hellraiser? Yeah. Jesus Christ. I mean, they had freaking pins all around my ears, in the back of my hands, the top of my toes, and I couldn't wait to go home and put a real needle in me. You know, that was bullshit, that was. That was junk. And I think I had to make a donation for that one. That really aggravated me. My parents, I went to them one time, and, you know, they raised me, you know, in the church, and we went and paid Father Guido some money, and we took a vow with the incense and the sage, and I got high that night. That didn't work, Father. The girl who used to cut my hair, she had a problem one time. She told me drugs, and she asked me to go to some church function with her one night, and I went, and I swear to God, they called me out of the audience, put me up on the stage, knocked me down, hands on praying out these spirits out of my body. I wanted to kill them, but I went home and I got high instead. That didn't work. I tried psychiatry. I figured it, because here's what my thinking is. I must be crazy. How could I go back to the same behavior, the same drug of choice, time after time, when I know what the result is going to be? How can I consciously expect it to be different, and even when I know it's not going to be different, I do it anyway? That's what used to kill me. You know, I'd have a little 3-6 months clean, and I knew that if I picked up, my life was going to, well, sometimes I knew it was going to be disastrous, other times I didn't, but I would make the choice anyway. So I used to think, I must be insane. I need therapy. I need medication or something. I'm a bad person. You know, there's something wrong with me. And thank God Narcotics Anonymous taught me that I'm not a bad person trying to be good. I'm a sick person trying to get well. You know what I mean? That made a big difference in my life when I, you know, the way I viewed Narcotics Anonymous to myself. That was useful and helpful to me. You know? But I tried all these different things and nothing worked for me. And I was such a low-life, hardcore user that I got to the point where I literally didn't believe Narcotics Anonymous was enough for me. I thought if you used the way I used, if you robbed your mom the way I did, you know, if you sold your stuff, if you went to prison, if you did all the things I did to get loaded, I tried all this other shit. How's sitting in a meeting for an hour with some recovery now is going to help me? It didn't work before. So what I started thinking was, I'm better off dead. These are my thoughts now, because I can't stay clean no matter what. I feel so useless, so worthless. I'm like the biggest piece of shit I know, right? I mean, I can't even look nobody in the eye. I can't feed myself. I can't clothe myself. I don't bathe regularly. I can't keep a roof over my head. I can't take care of myself at all. I'm pathetic. I rob people at ATM machines. You know, I do the most bizarre shit behaviors. I'm looking for aliens. You know what I mean? I'm naked in the closet. You know, hey, it isn't like I took a hit and said, fuck this job, and threw everything in the shopping cart and said, let's go. You know, it happens over time. But I'm at this point where I feel like life is better off without me, because I ain't worth nothing. I ain't contributing to life. And I got 2 little kids, man, and I used to take my kids to the cop spots. I've done smoke crack in front of my kids. They'd come in the room, and I have to try to quick turn the porno off, and what's that, Daddy? And, you know, and I can't talk, and my eyes look like 2 big hard-boiled eggs, and it was horrible, man. And I had my ex had to see my kids supervised, and not because I'm some child molester, but because I couldn't take care of me, let alone them. I couldn't be responsible for my own flesh and blood. And I got this idea because at one point in my clean time I had a job and there was a little life insurance policy attached to it. I felt that if I died, at least they got the life insurance policy. That's how they would remember me, not this, you know, dysfunctional dad type of thing. And I went to a friend of mine in Narcotics Anonymous, who I actually did some robberies and stuff with when I was a child, and he was clean for about 5 years at the time, I think it was. And I went to him and I said, look, Robert, I'm about to take myself out. I'm gonna, you know, have a car accident, blah blah blah, and I want you, if it comes to it, I want you to be able to vouch for me that, you know, it was an accident. He's like, why are you telling me all this? I said, because, you know, if it goes down as a suicide, they don't pay the life insurance. I want the kids to get something. He said, wow. He said, you're really desperate. And I said, yeah, man, I'm done. I can't take it no more, man. I said, you know, Narcotics Anonymous ain't enough for me. I've done tried all this other stuff, man. I'm just sick of it. I'm sick of living because I ain't living. I'm a prisoner. I'm a research monkey. I'm just tired of it, man. I can't stand myself no more. And he said, let me ask you something, Rich. He said, I ain't going to try to talk you out of your suicide, but if I offered you $20 right now, would you take it? And that's a stupid question for a Houston addict, right? Yeah, I'd take it. He said, I know you would. He said, but what if I took the 20 and I ripped it in half, and I crumpled it up, and I stomped it, and I left it on the floor in 2 pieces? Would you still take it? I said, yeah, I would take it. Why would you take it? I said, oh, I could still spend it. He said, you would take it because it still has value. You would take it because it still has worth. Even though it's tore up, dirty, crinkled, and broken on the ground, it still has value and worth. He said, you know what, Rich? You're just like that $20 bill, but you don't see it. You need to keep your ass clean for the next guy coming through the doors of NA talking about Narcotics Anonymous ain't enough for me. And I was flabbergasted. I'm thinking, what do you see in me? What do you mean I matter? What are you talking about, Robert? He's like, you know what? If you just embrace the program, get out of your own way, give yourself a break, and let the program take hold in your life, your story's invaluable to others. God will use you. I'm thinking, man, you see something in me? Because I don't see shit in me. You know? But I know that Just for Today talks about, just for today I will believe in somebody or look for someone who believes in me and wants to help me in my recovery, something along those lines. And that's what that reminded me of. Now, I wish I could tell you that the lightning bolt went off and I never used from that moment on. That would be pretty good, but that's not what happened. I had a little more in me, and it was probably a year or so before I hit my bottom. And really what happened for me was I done robbed everybody I could rob in New York. A girl came to my house to buy some heroin. She never left. And we headed out to California. And I came out here with a pocket full of dough, half a, like overnight bag full of drugs. And I was in San Diego for a few months, and then I worked my way up, down here, up here, whatever it is. And I wound up homeless in Hollywood, on Sunset and Weston, if anybody knows where it is. It ain't the best neighborhood, it ain't the worst neighborhood, but there I was with more shit in my hair than in my pockets, standing in front of the ATM machine one more time, waiting for, somebody that wouldn't give me too much of a struggle, thinking, here I go again. I came 3,000 miles for this, to start doing time in California. I don't even know nobody locked up out here. In New York, it's like old home week when I go back. You know what I mean? Where you been? What took you so long? Here, I probably got to, break some heads or whatever, or get mine broke. And I had a moment of clarity waiting for the victim at the ATM machine. I said, why don't I go to NA out here? Nobody knows me. I could probably tell them I'm clean. I just transferred. My job moved me out here. Can I get a cigarette? So that's kind of what we did. Like, we pulled it together. Actually, what I did is I went to Home Depot, stole some shit, returned it, and I got us a room. I got us a room in North Hollywood. And from there, I went and got me a little telemarketing job, and she went and got a little job, and I was kicked in the hotel room, and I kicked at the meetings, and it was just like, I got a sponsor, and that worked out really well. And then I think I had 6 months, and I got a promotion at my job. The job was paying me $750 a week. Now, I never made that kind of money in my life. And right away I think, $750 a week, I could get an 8-ball every weekend, still pay the rent, have groceries, blah, blah. This is great. Boom. And I went and I copped. And you know what? It took me, I think, 5 more months to hit a really bad bottom out here where, again, they gave me an eviction notice, et cetera, and I said, I'm going to try it one more time. Even though I was humiliated and I felt like shit, I tried it one more time, and I've stayed clean since 2001. And I'll tell you, yeah, thank you. Here's the difference. Here's the difference, okay? When all the years of in and out of Narcotics Anonymous, the only step I worked was 13. Right? I never worked a step. I liked 13, but that was it. But I don't even know if I ever surrendered. I think I retreated a lot, but I don't think I ever really surrendered. You know what I mean? And I was never willing to do, like they said, are you willing to do whatever it takes? What the hell does that mean? I don't know, Or you come back from a relapse, what are you going to do different? The hell do I know what to do different? If I knew what to do different, I probably wouldn't have relapsed. And the stupid question is that. So, but what I did was, my sponsor said, because I was one of them, intelligent addicts, because I've been around Narcotics Anonymous a long time, so of course, I could talk the talk. I ain't met an addict yet who can't talk the talk after you've been here a little while. And I couldn't walk the walk, but I could talk it. And I knew a lot about service from being around the fellowship, but he told me, look, no waiving of clean time for commitments. 90 meetings in 90 days. You must steady forward progress with the steps. No lollygagging. If you want me to sponsor you, we're going to do step work. Okay. That kind of stuff. I had to go to 5 different types of meetings. I went to a men's meeting, a speaker meeting, a topic discussion meeting, a participation meeting, and I had to go to a closed meeting. And thank God my area was very full with the options. I hung around with the guys. I was on the lam. When I first got here from New York, I had like 3 or 4 felonies. One was a bail jump, some other bunch of bullshit, but I had these felonies over my head, so I was always underground. I took the bus everywhere. Nobody knew my last name. And as a result, I didn't drive, obviously. Nobody would give me a license in Narcotics Anonymous, which would kind of piss me off. But I went about my recovery a day at a time. But what I did was, I went to meetings. I got my hand up and said, look, man, I'm new. I'm from New York. I'm trying to get clean. I need rides to meetings. And I want the guys' numbers. I stayed away from the women. I had a girl with me, like I said, from New York. And we're still together. We got clean. We used together, got clean together, got the same clean date, and I got the best relationship I've had in my life. And I may talk about that, yeah. But I just figured if nothing else, I'm going to do everything they say, and then I can be sure 100% this program don't work for a guy like me. That was part of my thinking, because I didn't know if it would really work for me after all these years of trying. But I just did what they said, and when I got my hand up in a meeting like that and I got the guy's numbers, I'd ask them for a ride to a meeting. And if I liked the guy, usually he had to be a jail guy, but if I connected with the guy, I'd ask him to make a commitment to pick me up like every Monday or every Tuesday or pick me up from work. This way I was like protected. I'd work all day, he'd pick me up at work, we'd have dinner, go to a meeting, he'd take me home, and I started stacking the days. That's all I was doing, was stacking days. My girl worked her program. We didn't go to meetings together. We didn't read the book together. She had her support group. She hung out with the women. I hung out with the guys. And what I didn't know was going to happen was I developed the deepest, loving, meaningful relationships with the guys in my life. I never knew what it really meant to have that kind of love or connection to somebody without something attached to it. This was new for me. And this was a wonderful experience because I didn't know you could really care for somebody without expecting something back or getting something back. Because in my using, if you wasn't sexing me or putting money in my pocket, I had no use for you. Literally, you were baggage. You weren't hanging around. You had to do something for me to be with me. That's how I was. And now here was totally different. Now it was about, how you doing today? What's going on with you? What are you experiencing? Or when it got further down the road, tell me some of your spiritual awakenings. How did you get in touch with the God? So on and so forth. And it's just like I started seeing the transformation. Going through the steps with my sponsor was the kindest, loving thing I've ever done for myself. And I still struggle with being kind and loving to me. It's part of this disease of addiction. However, going through those steps forced me to take a look at myself, my part in situations, throw my blame thrower away, and start making good choices for my life if I wanted a good life. If I wanted all this program had to offer, I needed to incorporate these principles in the 12 steps into my life. And that's what I realized as I started doing the steps and seeing the difference in myself. I started to have a couple of awakenings. And see, what I realized was those 8 years that I relapsed, I went to a lot of meetings. But that's all I did was go to meetings. I didn't put no steps in my life. And it made me realize that's where the money is. That's why they call it gifts. Got it from the steps. But what happened to me was when I started going through it, and I realized what was happening, I said, oh, you know what? So going to meetings is important. Do not get me wrong. We must go to meetings as recovering addicts on a regular basis. I get that. However, going to meetings on a regular basis does not make me recovering. Okay? Let me put it to you another way. If you go to the gym every day and you watch other people work out, are you going to get buff? Huh? Do you blow up? No. You don't. Right. That's it. You know? That's like sleeping in my garage every night and think I'm going to wake up being a Ferrari one day. You know? Just because I'm here don't mean I'm recovering. Right? I recover when I put the spiritual principles in my life. Right? See, what I learned early on in my recovery was I've got to do what I don't want to do when I don't want to do it. Because if I only do what I want to do when I want to do it, where is God's will in that? It ain't there. It's self-will. And I will self-destruct time after time after time if I get stuck in self-will. You know? So I try not to do that. You know? I had to learn honesty in all my affairs. Not just like cash register honesty, which was a difficult one for me for a long time, but what about like emotional honesty in a relationship, like boundaries? You know what I mean? I didn't understand that, man. I didn't know that people had boundaries. You know, I grew up pushing every boundary to the limit, man. You had to force me to stop because I didn't know when to stop. You know, with people and things, and I had to learn that. And that, you know what that did? That enhanced my relationships. It enhanced my self-image, my self-worth. You know, I had to learn about acceptance. Right? It's easy for me to be judgmental of other people or anything, service work, employees, whatever. But if I practice acceptance, I'm more into the solution, and I get more peace of mind because I can't change nobody anyway. You know what I mean? Another huge one for me was the forgiveness, right? Here's how I grew up. Everybody starts out with an A, and you work your way down as you violate me or disappoint me. And before you know it, I write you off. One way or another, I cast you out of my life because you always tend to disappoint me. And recovery early on was like that too. If we bumped heads at a service commitment or at a business meeting or even in a regular meeting, you were my enemy. I didn't look at us as being on the same team no more, right? Because I didn't know how to practice forgiveness. And when I went through the steps and I learned to put forgiveness into my life, and more importantly, I realized how much I needed to be forgiven for the shit I've done, it was easy for me to start forgiving other people and accept them for where they're at and their process. You know, we all have different time tracks in this road to recovery. So I learned a lot of things. I had to become very teachable in Narcotics Anonymous about what it meant to be an addict with the disease of addiction. You see, I thought the disease of addiction was just the drugs. And I realized I've been taught that it's not just the drugs. The disease of addiction, the way I give the definition when I sponsor guys, is the disease of addiction is an internal, self-destructive force. There is something inside of me that wants me to sabotage my own life. There's something inside me that wants me to destroy anything good in my life, whether it's through isolation and separation. Don't want to tell you what's going on with me because I can handle it, or you don't care anyway, or it's not going to change. Or processing the world through the eyes of fear and getting afraid to take a risk or make a plan or have a dream and follow it through. Still got me isolated alone like it did in the room when I was using. Keeps me by myself. You know, I think of the disease of addiction, a lot of it is also, especially early on, and I go through it today, is substitution. You know, the obsession and compulsive part of it. You know, if you give me something that brings me pleasure, you know I want it again and again and again, just like you do. You know, and just because I'm 6 years clean doesn't mean I don't suffer from a disease of addiction. I suffer, my two main areas that I suffer from, I suffer with food. I've gained about 55 pounds in 6 years clean. And I hide it well, just like I try really hard to appear normal, but but I feel it. And I hate myself because of it. And I don't like my image. And I don't like my body again. And, you know, and I hated myself since I was a little kid. I always lived in self-rejection. I always wished I looked different, had different teeth, different hair, didn't wear glasses, different family, different block, you know. And that never happened for me. And now here I find myself in recovery again, wishing like I wasn't this weight, or I didn't eat the way I eat so much of the time, and I can't back up from the table, or I eat in secrecy sometimes. There's been times I've eaten with coworkers, and then go out and eat again in secrecy and hide. And you want to talk about shame because my disease of addiction is active. The other one is like internet porn, and I ain't going to break it down. There's kids here, but you all know how it is, right? I mean, You seen one couple do it? You want to see them all do it. You know, it gets the best of me. It gets the best of me. It's like, you know, it's endless and it's bottomless, and I'll sit there and I'll surf for hours, man, and I'll say, okay, I'm going to cut it off, and I don't cut it off. You know, and it brings me back, and it reminds me, it's very fresh what this thing, how this self-destructive force inside me is very much alive, because it reminds me of when I was doing drugs, and I swore I would stop, but I didn't stop. Or when I was doing drugs, and I wanted to stop, but I didn't have the willingness to stop. And then I started hating myself because I didn't have the willingness. I seen the self-destruction taking place, yet I didn't have the willingness to do anything about it. And it's the same way today. I don't have the willingness sometimes to do anything about my weight, and it kills me. I don't have the willingness to shut the computer off, and it kills me. I'm thinking, what is wrong with me? What's wrong with me is I got the disease of addiction. But what I've learned to do is, a lot of it is about perception. It's my responsibility to recovery. Happiness is my responsibility. It's my responsibility to look at the glass as half full. So what I do, when I start getting down on myself, I got to take a step back and say to myself, wait a minute, Rich, look at your life. You're a success story, man. You used to rob your mama at knife point, right? You hurt many, many countless nameless, faceless people. And look at you today. You're a productive member of society. You go to work every day. You pay your taxes. You're clean. You're a good father to your kids today. You know, I mean, on and on and on. I got to remember, you're right. Just because I get caught up in too much food or internet stuff doesn't make me a bad person. And as long as I stay clean, there's hope that it'll get better. You know, because my life is very much about putting the fires out. One fire at a time. I put it out, and then something else pops up. Like my friend told me early on, it's like that game Whack-A-Mole. You know, you have the arcade, that goddamn little thing comes up, you try to hit it with the hammer, and then it comes up over here, and you try to hit it there. It's the same thing with the disease of addiction. Sometimes it's the internet stuff killing me. Sometimes it's the fear. Sometimes, you know, it's the isolation. Sometimes it's the Oreos. You know what I mean? And you got it too. You might be scratch-off lottery tickets. I don't know what you see. I bet you there's some women that suffer comfort for style with them shoes you're wearing by. I'll bet you. I'll bet you spend more than you intend to spend sometimes. But, you know, I know. I get it. That's why, you know, it's a joy to be a member of Narcotics Anonymous today. You know, I believe wholeheartedly in this program. I love my life being clean. And for a guy who thought that life was over and I would never have fun without drugs, I can't tell you how much fun I got in my life. Like I say, my relationship is phenomenal. You know, I mean, I'm not saying that it's there's no arguments and that kind of stuff, but the fact that I can love somebody so unconditionally and try to bring out the best in them is amazing to me, you know, and I know that she's getting the best of me and I'm getting the best of her. You know, my kids want to live with me today. My son lived with me for 3.5 years. He went back because I never got custody, but a month ago I got custody of my daughter. She's 13, she's living with me, she's loving it, and it's a wonderful thing to be with her again. And I hope that my son will come back soon. I started my own business about 2.5 years ago. I've had guys telling me for years, Rich, you should start your own business, but I didn't believe in me. Look, I didn't pre-register for a convention until I had 3 years clean. In case I relapsed, I couldn't get that money back, you know? So I wasn't there going to think about starting a business. You know, what do I know? I couldn't even think about staying employed for any length of time. But I started this business about 2.5 years ago, and basically what I do is fire department supply. I supply fire departments with life-saving equipment, and it's been phenomenal. You know, it's really done well for me, and I feel so blessed because of that. And I fell into it. You know what I mean? It's like a degree of luck for sure. But I took the risk. I went out on a limb, and the people in Narcotics Anonymous supported me. You know, I mean, I could go on and on and on to how wonderful my life is. You know, but I don't want to take it, you know, too far. I know I want to wrap it up real soon. I feel like I've been up here for a long time, and I didn't really address the Newcomer, which is one of the things I wanted to do in the beginning, but I got so damn nervous that it went right over my head, you know. But if you're new, welcome to Narcotics Anonymous. You never have to use again, no matter what, even when you want to. And you may hear that a lot, but it's the truth, because I've been there. There's many times I've wanted to use, But what I've done, I've learned to look at my own history, because every time I picked up, my life turned to shit. And just because my head's attached to my body doesn't mean it's my friend. And I'm powerless over my thoughts, but I'm not powerless over my choices. And as long as I don't pick up the first one, my life stays manageable. If I pick up the first one, I already know what's going to happen. I'm convinced today. No longer do I live in denial like it had me for so long, because it would tell me it'll be different this time. You won't rob mom. You won't sell your shit. And I would believe it. And I would pick up without telling nobody. And I don't do that today. Today I learned to take care of myself. You know, when I feel like using, I go in the meeting still and I share it. Because I think it's a good thing for us to do. Let the newcomer know. Even with time, we still feel like using sometimes. People think there's no hope in that, but there is. And the real lesson is this. You know, they say that this disease dies in the light of exposure, and it's true. It's my experience. It's like pulling weeds from a garden when I tell them myself. They don't die the minute I pull them, but when I pull them and leave them in the sun, they shrivel up and die. And it's the same thing when I tell them my self-destructive thoughts. I take the power out of them, and they shrivel up and they die on me. And I'm freed up to move on to the next thing. You know, so if you're new, welcome. Give yourself a break. Give your family a break. You know what I mean? The message of Narcotics Anonymous is that an addict, any addict, rich, poor, black, white, Hispanic, handicapped, it don't matter, any addict can stop using drugs, lose the desire to use, which means you don't have to come here with a desire to use, but if you keep coming, we're telling you the desire to use will be lifted and find a new way of life, which is to live and enjoy life without the use of drugs. So I'm not trying to tell a newcomer, if you come here, that all your problems are going to vanish and the gates to heaven are going to open. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is if you come here and you do what we do around here in the program Narcotics Anonymous, I promise you the gates to hell will close. Thank you for letting me share.
All right.
Let's thank our speaker one more time.